Mahabharatam Dharma Adharma Sangharshanam.
On the second day and third day also, both sides suffered great losses, but none of the leaders suffered. On the fourth day, the Kauravas used the Vyala Formation. Arjuna countered with a challenging formation. On that day, Bhima waged a terrible war with the army of elephants of Magadha Desha. He rushed into the midst of the elephants and ranged in the battlefield, slaughtering the elephants. Each blow of his mace killed an elephant. The tusks of some elephants were broken, trunks were broken, legs were broken. At this disaster, the elephants panicked and ran helter-skelter. Virtually, the entire elephant force of Magadha was destroyed by Bhima's mace. Then, Bhima ascended a chariot and killed 8 sons of Dhritarashtra. The Dhritarashtra killed a Kourava Rathika Damana by name and also the son of Shalya. On the 5th day, the Pandavas countered the Makara formation of the Kourava army with the Shayana formation. It was a fierce battle and Arjuna slew several thousands of Kourava soldiers. 10 sons of Satyaki in the Pandava army were killed. On the 6th day, the Pandavas used the Makara formation and the Kauravas the Krancha formation. Thousands of chariot warriors and cavalry men died on that day. Bhishma crushed the Kekaya and the Panchala forces with his stinging arrows. On the 7th day, Drona killed a group of warriors known as Shankhas on the Pandava side. On the 8th day, Bhima massacred 17 sons of Dhritarashtra, and the next day he slew thousands of elephants belonging to Bhagadatta's army. In this war, day after day, the mighty heroes on either side fought valiantly. They displayed a wide range of martial skills. They charged against enemies who were a little tardy, but fled if the enemies gained the upper hand. The commanders resorted to new formations every day. Each army would choose a formation which it hoped would facilitate an attack on the enemy but would protect itself from enemy attack. The enemy army would choose a counter formation. The opposing commanders were masters of army formations like Crown Charuna, Garuda, Ardhachandra, Vyalva, Makara, Suchimukha, Mandala Vajra and Shringataka. The weapons employed by the opposing armies produced deafening sounds. Blinding sparks which dazzled the beholders also leapt from the sounds of the clash of lances and spears and spikes and swords. The lion-like roars of the warriors, the sound of the conches and cries like "Catch him, strike and kill," which rose from the lips of the soldiers, reached the skies. The twanging of bows and the clang of swords instilled fear in the hearts of the opponents. As if to answer the cries of the wounded and the dying, jackals howled nearby. The blood flowing from the bodies of lakhs of soldiers, elephants and horses which were wounded formed a veritable big lake of blood. Kites flew around the lake and sometimes, swooping down suddenly, pricked the eyes of the wounded. They pulled away pieces from their legs and arms and carried them away in their beaks. The hearts of many burst at these sights and they died. As days passed, dead bodies piled up and the lake of blood went on expanding. 9 days passed, but victory still hung in the balance. Bhishma was the most formidable obstacle in the way of the Pandavas. Every day he slaughtered thousands of soldiers of the Pandava army, and his zeal for battle seems to wax stronger every day. The Pandavas realized that unless they overcame Bhishma, they could not survive. At the end of the battle on the 9th day, the Pandavas, led by Sri Krishna, went to Bhishma's tent. They touched his feet and paid their respects. Then Yudhishtira said, "Grandfather, we have been treated unjustly by the Kauravas. We are fighting for justice. Is it not right that we should win? But as long as you lead the Kaurava forces, victory is only a dream for us. Try as they did, Bhima and Arjuna have not been able to defeat you. Therefore, grandfather, tell us how we may overcome you on the battlefield and be the architect of our success. Ensure that where there is dharma, there is victory too." Bhishma answered with a smile, "Yudhishtira, you have by your side the wisest person in all the 3 worlds, Sri Krishna. and you are worried about defeating me? I am really astonished. What is there that Sri Krishna does not know? Let that be. That you have come to me and sought my guidance shows that there is no hypocrisy in you. I am pleased with you. Tomorrow, let Arjuna put Shikandi, the son of Drupada, in front of him and attack me. I shall stop fighting, because I will not fight with Shikandi. When I have thus laid down arms, let your soldiers attack me on all sides with their arrows. My defeat will then be certain. The Pandavas once again bowed to Bhishma and returned to their camp. The two armies employed different formations on the 10th day, and the battle began. From the start, Bhishma swooped on the Pandava forces and assailed them, discharging arrows like fierce rain beating down, and confounded them. He cut into pieces the arrows of the Pandavas, the Viratas and the Panchalas. He massacred and fell to the ground innumerable soldiers, elephants and horses. He separated the wheels from the chariots and brought the chariots down. Discharging arrows as deadly as Indra's Vajrayudha, he ranged all over the battlefield and bewildered the Pandava soldiers. On that single day, Bhishma destroyed 5,000 Rathikas, 14,000 elephants. He shone like Bhairava, the god of destruction on the battlefield. This thrilling display of valor by the aged Bhishma inspired the Kuru commanders, and they attacked the Pandava forces. Shalya, Dushasana, Kripa and Vikarna, sitting in radiant chariots, were exultant that victory was certainly theirs, and their mighty arrows and missiles left the enemy forces tottering. Like a ship tossed about by a powerful storm, the Pandava army was thrown about and scattered. While Bhishma and the others were thus tormenting the Pandava host, Arjuna was fighting at the other end of the battlefield. He learned that Bhishma had mounted an awesome assault on the Pandava army. He immediately told Sri Krishna about it, and the horses galloped to where Bhishma was fighting. The sight of Arjuna, who approached, sounding his great conch Devadatta and twanging his Gandiva, infused new life in the Pandava forces. Drishtadyumna, Satyaki, Bhimasena, Drishtaketu, the Kekaya brothers and Abhimanyu all faced the Kuru army together. Arjuna began to cut Bhishma's arrows into pieces, slew the elephants in the enemy army, slaughtered the Rathikas and the cavalrymen, and advanced to the middle of the battlefield. His chariot now faced Bhishma's. Bhishma was again and again roaring like a lion and shooting sharp arrows at the enemy forces. Enraged, Arjuna cut his bow into two. He then sent forth a ceaseless stream of arrows directed at Bhishma and his charioteer. When Bhishma tried to string another bow, he cut that too into two. Every time Bhishma took up a bow, Arjuna would cut it. Furious at this, Bhishma directed a very powerful missile, the Shaktyayudha, at Arjuna. Arjuna shot 5 arrows simultaneously, and the Shaktyayudha fell down in 5 pieces. Other weapons like Kampana, Naracha, Vatsadanta and Tomara proved similarly ineffective. At this point, at Duryodhana's command, the Kourava soldiers surrounded and attacked Arjuna, but were slaughtered by his powerful weapons. Evening was approaching. Arjuna had decided to vanquish Bhishma before the battle ended for the day. He placed Shikandi in front and started shooting arrows. The moment he saw Shikandi, Bhishma stopped fighting. Arjuna and the other Pandava soldiers surrounded him and discharged powerful arrows. Arjuna's arrows entered his body. The Pandava soldiers shouted, "Fell Bhishma, vanquish him!" Overwhelmed by the fierce rain of arrows, Bhishma fell down from his chariot. The arrows which had pierced his body became his cot. The Kourava army was petrified when Bhishma fell. Duryodhana cried in a shock and raced to the patriarch. The Pandavas too stopped fighting and, approaching Bhishma, stood with folded hands. Blood streamed from Bhishma's body. There was no hope of the aged sire's survival. It was Dakshinayana then, and the old sire did not wish to die during that period, when Bhishma had declared that he would remain a bachelor for life in order that his father Shantanu might wed Satyavati. Shantanu had said, "You will be able to will your death," and thus granted him a boon. So Bhishma decided to lie on the cot of arrows until the Uttarayana Punyakala. Bhishma, lying on the cot of arrows, was very uncomfortable because he did not have a pillow to rest his head. He then said, "Provide me with a firm pillow for my head." At once, very soft silken pillows were brought from Duryodhana's palace. Bhishma declined them and said, "I want pillows worthy of heroes," and glanced at Arjuna. Arjuna bowed to Bhishma, fixed 3 arrows to his bow, and shot them so that they pierced the ground under his head. They formed a pillow for Bhishma to rest his head, and he felt some relief. After a while, Bhishma asked for water to drink. Duryodhana had cool and fragrant water fetched from the palace. Bhishma said, "I want sacred water." Arjuna fixated the Parjanyastra to his bow and shot it into the ground to the right of Bhishma. The arrow pierced the ground and up sprang a pellucid fountain of water, sweet and sacred and tasting of many divine juices like nectar. Bhishma drank the water and quenched his thirst. Then Bhishma said, "Duryodhana, do you see what Arjuna can do? No one except Arjuna can perform such feats. He is the master of numerous powerful arrows like the Agneya, the Varuna, the Vayavya, the Aindra, the Pashupata, the Brahmya, the Parameshtya, the Prajapatya, the Twashtriya, the Savitra, and the Vaivashvata. Therefore, do not foster enmity with him but make friends. Call a halt to this war and make peace with the Pandavas." But Duryodhana would not agree. He said he would continue the war. Bhishma sighed and fell silent. The Kourava and the Pandava forces returned to their camps with full-throated praise of Bhishma's prowess and Arjuna's prowess. After Bhishma lay down on the bed of arrows, Dronacharya became the supreme commander of the Kourava forces. Karna had always been hostile to Bhishma. He had vowed that he would not fight as long as Bhishma was the supreme commander. Now that Drona was the commander, he joined the army. The Kourava army fought with a new jest. Shalya, the king of Madradesha, fought a fierce battle with Yudhishtira. So did Vinda and Anuvinda of Avanti Desha with the Matsya army. Bahlika Raja with the Panchala army, and Karna with the king of Kekaya. Drona, seated in a chariot drawn by red-colored horses, charged at the Pandava army. His sharp arrows confounded the Pandava army. As arrows leapt from his bow, the Panchala and the Matsya soldiers screamed and ran helter-skelter.